I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Welcome back, fam. So great to see your faces, or pretend what your faces look like. I'm glad we're back. We have breaking bombshell news to discuss tonight. So I'm pretty sure you all know about the Epstein unsealed documents. That is where we will spend most of our time tonight during the show, because there is just a lot to discuss. So shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat. You know how we do over here. We start from the very beginning. Shout out to CBC Voter, says, happy Thursday, Sabby Sabs. Hello. Greetings, Natalie says, hey, fellow Sabsters. How many of you think this Epstein release is just another limited hangout to make people shut up already? Greetings, Brent says, oh boy, this is going to be a hot one. Shout out to David, says, happy New Year's, Sabby. Happy New Year's to you as well. Shout out to Tyrone, who's a Sabby member, says South Carolina on standby, B1. Greetings, Arlene says, you so smart, I love you. Thank you, I love you too. Shout out to Teddy G, says pre-like the stream now. Go ahead and hit that like button there, guys. Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says 362 days until 2025. Let's get this year over with. Already, Lawrence? Already? Shout out to Nawep 803. We in this. Reparations, or we ain't got shit to talk about. Clyburn, Biden, Trump. I'm headed west where it's the best. And Nawep is crying there. Shout out to Lee, says, remember, folks, the in Charlamagne the God means the rather than the usual UK meaning of there. As in ole, ola, ole, we're going to bring that World Cup back from over the by Rod Stewart. Okay. Shout out to Freeman, says, yep, and Trump wasn't on the list. In fact, the girl testified that she never even seen Trump on Epstein's island, at his ranches, or anywhere near Epstein. We will get into that story tonight. Shout out to Serena. Greetings, comrades. Guess who entered public domain this year? Sort of. I'll give you a hint. And I think that's a picture of a mouse there. Shout out to Hannah, says, I'll be listening while at work. This will be an interesting show. Shout out to Awesome Black Dude, says, some say Tyler Perry might be on the list. I wouldn't be surprised if OJ somehow make the list. Oh boy, not the juice. Shout out to Eric, says, hey, Sabby, at this point, I wouldn't even be surprised at who is on this list, given how much sus stuff plenty of these well-known figures either do or are rumored to have done. Interesting. Shout out to Marco, says, good evening, y'all. What's going on? Teddy says, I won't be on that list. I'm not nearly wealthy enough, and I'm okay with that. Greetings, Mastermind says, tonight's drinking game is every time Sabby says accused or alleged. Okay, well, get ready to drink that. That's a good one. Greetings, Taffy says, it's close to midnight and something's evil is lurking in the dark. Thriller. Shout out to Golden Monarch, says the Epstein list has been officially released. Yes, actually, this is part 1. There is another part that is set to drop. I think that's supposed to happen tonight as well. So it's a lot. It's a lot. We'll get into it. Shout out to Terry Hinton, says hello to Mastermind. Greetings, Lorez says, sup, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Charlamagne should hashtag them exit completely. Gavin has been a cringy establishment shill from day one. He killed the CA version of Medicare for all and wasted surplus. Hit the like, y'all. Shout out to Rich, says Trump, Epstein, who? Melania, who? Greetings, Grassy Nose, says Dershowitz with no clothes on should be a felony. I know you guys were going to come with jokes tonight. Oh boy. Shout out to Mark, says Sabby. Greetings, Zombie in the Air, says let's go. Shout out to Zero Joshua, who's a Sabby member, says doobie doobie doo. What's going on? Notori sends love and a wave. And shout out to, I'm making sure I'm not skipping over someone. Sean says yo, and greetings to Sakudo. We in here. And yes, Teddy G, that was Tom's Diner, the song I was humming in the beginning. Good old 90s classic, Tom's Diner. It's a good song. And hello, gamer. All right, let's go ahead and get started, guys, because we have quite a bit of time to spend on the Epstein story. And I am going to do call-in tonight. I was debating, but then I figured people probably at least want to talk about the Epstein story, if anything. So we are going to do call-in tonight. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're killing it out here. You're holding down the fort. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. They're the meat of the sandwich. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Jay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All righty. Based. Okay, guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and show that thumbnail so we can get into tonight's discussion. Get ready. You know, if you need to grab popcorn, if you need to grab a beverage for yourself, go ahead and take the time to do that because we're getting into the thick of it tonight. Tonight, we are discussing Epstein documents unsealed. You'll see there's a picture there of Jeffrey Epstein, and that is Alan Dershowitz next to him in that picture. We have quite a bit to say about Dershowitz tonight. We're also going to discuss Charlamagne the God regrets Biden. This is another huge story that I think is kind of flown under the radar a bit. I don't think a lot of people have seen this, but we're going to get into that. I'm also going to discuss Gavin Newsom alarm. What is Gavin Newsom doing in California? We're going to bring forward that story. And we're also going to discuss Claudine Gay resigns. And there's quite a bit I have to say about that, actually from a perspective that I feel has not been, voiced yet. There's something very important that is missing from that story that I have not heard in other analysis so far. And I am going to mention that tonight. So let's dive right in, honey buns. Let's get started with this first story about what just happened in California. First and foremost, I want to start off by saying I heavily support Medicare for all, universal health care. I've participated in marches to support that cause. I've been very vocal about that for quite some time. However, now even people like myself who do support universal health care are not too happy with something that Gavin Newsom just passed in California, which will start this year. To all my Cali peeps, what up? Let's get into it. California becomes the first state to offer health insurance to all undocumented immigrants. Yes, about 700,000 adults ages 26 and 49 will be eligible as of January 1st. So let's get into this story. Gavin Newsom is getting a lot of criticism for this. California will welcome the new year by becoming the first state to offer health insurance to all undocumented immigrants. Starting January 1st, all undocumented immigrants, regardless of age, will qualify for Medi-Cal, California's version of the federal Medicaid program for people with low incomes. Previously, undocumented immigrants were not qualified to receive comprehensive health insurance, but were allowed to receive emergency and pregnancy-related services under Medi-Cal as long as they met eligibility requirements, including income limits and California residency in 2014. Note this part here, the California residency part. Now I want to chime in just a second. So here's the problem. It was just about a year or two ago where CalCare was set to pass in the state of California. Now, from what I understood, they actually had the votes to pass CalCare, which would have been California's version of single payer healthcare for everyone in the state. And big money came in, and at the last minute, the California representatives decided not to vote on it at all because big money from big pharma came in. This would have given everyone health insurance in California. So what they ended up settling with is what they had previously, which is Medi-Cal, right? This is somewhat similar to what we have here in Massachusetts, which is called Mass Health. It's not given to everybody. You have to meet a certain income requirement to actually qualify for Mass Health. And I have to state that because some people have reached out to me and said, doesn't Massachusetts have single payer? No, we don't. We have Mass Health, and there are certain requirements that you have to meet in order to qualify for Mass Health. So obviously everyone doesn't get it. And I have actually known people that are in that in-between income bracket where their income is too low for them to actually pay for private health insurance, but their income is too high for them to qualify for Mass Health. So being in that group is really tough, right? So the problem here is that California had the opportunity and had all the votes to pass CalCare in the state of California for all the people. Again, that wouldn't have applied to undocumented immigrants because, again, even under Medi-Cal, they had to meet those eligibility requirements, right? So now the reason why some people are frustrated is because they're saying, once again, our politicians are willing to give benefits to undocumented immigrants, some people refer to them as migrants, that they weren't willing to give us, or that some of us had to jump through hoops just to actually get the paperwork and to qualify for. Let's continue. In 2015, undocumented children were able to join Medi-Cal under a bill signed by then Governor Jerry Brown. In 2019, Gavin Newsom signed into law an expansion of full scope Medi-Cal access for young adults ages 19 through 25, regardless of citizenship or immigration status. Access was then further expanded to allow older adults age 50 and older to receive full benefits, also regardless of immigration status. The final expansion going into effect January 1st will make approximately 700,000 undocumented residents between ages 26 and 49 eligible for full coverage. So the part where people are starting to push back again, like I told you, these types of programs like Medi-Cal, like Mass Health, it takes some people a long time to actually qualify and get approved for those programs, people who are citizens of the United States. But now it's like they're willing to give those same benefits, full healthcare benefits, to immigrants that have come to the United States that are undocumented when everybody else had to jump through hoops just to get the bare minimum. This goes back to something that we were talking about Tuesday night, how more people, especially Democrat voters in places like California, Illinois, and New York, are becoming more vocal about the fact that we have Democrat politicians. And I say Democrat because the Republican politicians aren't doing this, but Democrat politicians that are willing to give undocumented immigrants opportunities that the rest of us had to fight for or we didn't receive at all, right? Tuesday, I brought up the housing issue, how they're giving undocumented immigrants money for housing. They ain't giving us money for housing, right? Let's go on a little bit here. This historic investment speaks to California's commitment to healthcare as a human right, which I agree. I agree that healthcare is a human right. In California, we believe everyone deserves access to quality, affordable healthcare coverage, regardless of income or immigration status. So let's highlight immigration status, because this is the thing I got to question. When Bernie Sanders was running for president in 2020, one of the biggest criticisms that he received in reference to Medicare for all was, how are you going to pay for it? Right? Which I always said was BS. It's actually cheaper to have Medicare for all than it is to pay for private health insurance. But now it just seems like I don't see people asking Gavin Newsom those questions. And if we want to talk about people paying taxes in the state of California, are California citizens paying taxes to pay for this health care for undocumented immigrants? These are the kind of questions we have to ask. Again, my critique is not with the migrants. Again, like I said, you have to go back to the foreign policy issue, and we have to hold our government accountable for destroying those countries economically via sanctions, coups, etc. That's where it starts. But my problem is, it just seems like to me, when those of us who are already here, those of us who are American citizens, when we ask for these types of demands, when we ask for these types of benefits, we're told things like, how are you going to pay for it? Or we're told, no, get a job and earn it like everybody else did. But when it comes to people who are undocumented immigrants that have come into this country, it seems like they're willing to bend over backwards to help them. And that's the problem that I have. It goes on to say here, California's plan to expand coverage has not been without its detractors. The California Senate Republican caucus criticized the move in an analysis of the 2022-23 governor's budget. Medi-Cal is already strained by serving 14.6 million Californians, more than a third of the state's population. Adding 764,000 more individuals to the system will certainly exacerbate current provider access problems. So let's highlight this for just a second. 14.6 million Californians are on Medi-Cal. So what does that tell you, folks? Again, there's an income requirement you have to meet to qualify for Medi-Cal. That tells you what people are actually making in the state of California. 14.6 million Californians. And I want to read this piece right here. When we talk about the resources, it says studies have shown that undocumented immigrants use fewer healthcare resources than do non-immigrants. About 50% of undocumented immigrant adults in America report being uninsured, compared to just 8% of US-born citizens. And that is according to the health policy research nonprofit KFF. So obviously, if you're uninsured, of course, you're going to use less healthcare resources. And this goes for anyone that lives in this country. If you don't have health insurance, obviously, you're not going to use healthcare services as much because you have to pay out of pocket. When I didn't have health insurance for a while and I had to pay for my physical for a doctor's visit, $200 just to walk through the door. That didn't include the cost of the labs. So it just, if you don't have insurance to help cover the cost of some of those expenses, obviously you're going to use fewer healthcare resources. But if Gavin Newsom is giving them the full healthcare benefits under Medi-Cal, that percentage could change. And that's the point that I wanted to bring home there. Now, Gavin Newsom actually did respond to this. He was questioned about it recently. So I want you to hear what Gavin Newsom had to say.
And then kind of an off-topic question, but Governor, I know there's been some pushback recently on offering free health care to undocumented immigrants as it pertains to the state budget deficit. Are you eyeing a possible rollback of that expansion?
Well, we'll get that budget out there. No, I'm committed to it. I'm committed. I believe in universal health care. I believe it's a fundamental right. I'm proud of the fact the legislature embraced that vision and has been advancing since 2016 when we initiated as one of the first states to advance that effort. So it's well within our capacity to make that investment, and we made that commitment years ago, and we're going to fulfill that commitment. And by the way, one of our commitments as well, we created a new Office of Health Care Affordability, was to drive down the costs of health care. That framework has just been established, and a big part of what this represents is the opportunity to drive down the costs, not just of healthcare more broadly, but particularly drug costs and breakthroughs as it relates to solving and curing things like cancer and other chronic diseases. And so this is all in line in that spirit and that zeitgeist.
Okay, so the volume on that is a little bit low. Apologies for that. But so he basically said that he believes in universal health care and that we should cut the cost of healthcare expenses. Now, before I get into what some people have said, because rapper 50 Cent actually responded about this. But before I get into that, one thing I want to bring to your attention is this. A couple of months ago, I actually interviewed a reparations activist on this show, Camilla. She's actually one of the people that's a part of the reparations task force in California, pushing like politicians there to help African-American descendants of slavery receive some type of reparations in California. She's been working on this for quite some time, right? Probably seen her on other shows as well. So, very quickly, that was shut down very quickly. But the state can give health insurance to undocumented immigrants, but they won't give any type of reparations towards American descendants of slavery who are citizens. So let that sink in. Now, 50 Cent did issue a response. Rapper 50 Cent. 50 Cent these days is not in the club. 50 Cent said, find me in the healthcare system. He said 50 Cent doesn't understand why California is giving immigrants living illegally free health care. So let's go into this. And there's 50 Cent there. 50 Cent is like, I got 21 questions, he says. On Wednesday, 50 Cent shared a post on Instagram, which can be seen below, questioning Cali's new move to provide universal health care to its roughly 39 million residents, including the people who are living in the state illegally. In the post, 50 shared a screenshot of a news article on the topic. He captioned the post, "I don't understand this. This is going to cost $2.6 billion for taxpayers. They don't even give veterans health insurance. Ari Melber, call my phone now. Help me understand this shit. WTF," he added, tagging MSNBC journalist Ari Melber. So you'll see here, there's actually a screenshot of that post. So that's 50 Cent's Instagram account. And you'll see it said here, California becomes the first state to offer health insurance to illegal migrants. And there's 50 Cent's comment there. So he's just like, what the heck? And I can tell you a little bit about the veterans here because my dad's a vet. And I can tell you that the VA in this country is awful. I mean, I know from firsthand experience, my dad, it took him years for the VA to approve for my dad to have 100% disability. I'm talking years. And if it's not something like that, I'm talking about the soldiers that come back from these wars and they go to the VA to receive the type of assistance that they're told that they're going to get when they join the military. And the VA just pushes a lot of paperwork, delays things, doesn't help them with mental health the way that it should. That's why you see all these veterans out on the street. Think about that. I can't walk through one college area in this city without seeing veterans on the street. So he has a good point there. And it just makes you wonder. I don't know. Maybe Ari Melber will contact 50 Cent. Maybe 50 Cent will go on MSNBC and he'll talk about it. But we need to start talking about this because the thing is, what else needs to happen for our government and our politicians to realize that we cannot continue to be overlooked? Where's our health care? I told you on Tuesday that politicians in Chicago were giving $9,000 for rent to migrants that came into Chicago. Black Chicagoans were basically saying, like, you guys have never done anything for us. Where's our money for rent? So we got to pay attention to what's happening here. And again, I believe that this is all an effort to basically find a way to replace workers in this country. We've had a lot of strikes over the past year and a half. And I do feel that some of the politicians in this country are trying to find a way to have cheap labor. And they know that they can pay them less than what they're paying us. So don't be surprised. I saw a story the other day that said that they were trying to get undocumented immigrants to join the military because military recruitment is down. A lot of younger people, the Gen Z kids, they don't want to join the military. They're like, oh, hell no. No. You're not sending me to go off and die in these wars. So they're trying to find a way to fill that gap. We got to pay attention, folks. Got to pay attention. Let's go to some of the comments here. Shout out to Kit from Hardlands Media. Guys, make sure you go over and support Hardlands Media. I know Kit is streaming on I think it's a second channel now. You guys know they've had issue with their main channel, but definitely make sure you go over and support them there. JB says, I'm fine with undocumented immigrants getting health care. My issue is that there's no universal health care for citizens who live here. So poor citizens who fall between the gaps are hung out to dry. Exactly. And that was the point that I was making about the people that fit into that income bracket where they don't make enough to pay for private insurance, but they don't make too little to actually qualify for Medi-Cal. Shout out to Eric, says politicians like Newsom are purposely trying to divide the people against the immigrants themselves who have no power. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for having this immigration discussion. You are welcome, Rick. Thank you, Money Making Bear. In California, the majority race is Latino. Many are immigrants. Whites are only 1/3 of the population. Many have lived in the U.S. and worked for years. I've never even been to California. And thank you for this one as well, Money Making Bear. Insurance companies aren't threatened by this. That is the deal. In California, hardly any white people. Have you been there lately? No, I have never been to California. So you were telling me, Mr. Money Making Bear, because I have never been there. All right. We are about to dive into probably the most controversial story tonight, probably of the week. If you have not heard, they have finally unsealed the Jeffrey Epstein documents. Now, there are a number of names throughout those documents. I actually have a link to a Guardian article that I'm going to share with you in the chat, so you have access to those documents as well, because the Guardian actually took the time to take the documents and just embed them in their article, which is actually pretty base. I'm not going to hate on it, but it's like over hundreds of pages. I have skimmed through probably about 50 and picked up the information that I need for this show tonight. This is part one. There is going to be a part two that is dropped as well. I think that's coming out tonight. I can't read all these hundreds of pages, but I skipped through what I felt that you needed to know that is important. But first, we're going to start with this clip here when it was announced that those documents have been unsealed. And then there are a couple of people that are mentioned in those documents that I saw for myself that we are going to highlight tonight. And we're going to go person by person so that this doesn't end up a jumbled mess, because it could easily be that way. Let's get started here. The Jeffrey Epstein documents have been unsealed.
What we've been waiting for, really, for the past now 2 days, the court finally unsealing several high-profile names of those in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit, and that was due to this lawsuit that was filed over the Ghislaine Maxwell case. I want to put some video up of Epstein there. We now know that nearly 200 names that had previously been redacted from court documents in a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein's former lover and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, have been made public on orders of this federal judge there in New York. And this is what we know. Some of those names, big names on the list, they include former President Bill Clinton, Epstein's estranged longtime aide, Doug Band, Prince Andrew, member of the royal family, of course, brother to King Charles, and the French modeling agent, Jean-Luc Brunel, who, like Epstein, died while awaiting trial. So in the meantime, we want to bring into the conversation now more experts to kind of help us analyze all of this. What does this mean for the Jeffrey Epstein story and saga? Moving forward, of course, Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide in a jail cell in 2019 at the Manhattan Correctional Center. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence. And some of Epstein's victims have gotten settlements from banks like JP Morgan Chase and also Deutsche Bank over their ties to Epstein's. And they were, of course, the banks that he did his finances from. Let's bring into the conversation right now senior legal analyst with The Messenger, Adam Klasfeld. He knows so much about this story. He joins me. Adam, thanks for being with us here. So the delays are over. We have some names. I have this now almost 100-page kind of exhibit here. This is just one exhibit with some of these names here. Have you poured over any of this here? Did anything surprise you, if you have?
Just want to pause here for just a second. That's one exhibit. I believe what I saw was over 900 pages. So just FYI.
So just to give your viewers a little bit of background, these files were just released shortly before our interview. I think they broke at around the 7 o'clock hour. Some of my colleagues at The Messenger have been poring over them. One of the revelations that came about, there was a deposition by one of Epstein's victims, Johanna Schmorsberg. And one of his alleged victims, Ms. Schmorsberg, had said in a deposition that Jeffrey Epstein allegedly told her that former President Clinton liked them young. That was one of the quotes that some of my colleagues found.
Okay, so some of the people that I saw, of course, Bill Clinton, we all knew that. I covered that a couple of nights ago. We'll get into that a little bit further. Bill Clinton, David Copperfield, the magician. I guess out of all the things that Dave could make disappear, he couldn't make this one disappear. He was mentioned in that list, in those documents. Donald Trump name was mentioned, but in a different way. It's not what you think. I'll get into that in just a second. Hillary Clinton's hairstylist, Frederique, was also mentioned. Michael Jackson was mentioned. It's just, oh my God. Like, it makes me disgusted, like, thinking about it. But there are a number of names, some of them that we'll get to. I don't remember everybody, but it was a number of names. Naomi Campbell was actually mentioned as well. Naomi Campbell, the supermodel. Yeah. Let's continue.
At the Messenger, in the same deposition file, there was a reference to former President Trump. It said that she was not asked to give him a massage. There have been other references in different documents to Prince Andrew, who your viewers may remember, that Virginia Giuffre, who's the woman who filed the lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell that set all of this into motion, had also filed a lawsuit against Prince Andrew. Now, her allegations go into a little bit more detail in the Unsealed filings. She says in one of the filings, she alleges that she was forced into an orgy with the prince. So we are, as you noted, this is a large stack of files. Journalists are certainly going to be poring over it to see how many of these allegations are new, how many of these allegations are rehashed. These documents have been around under seal in a court record for quite a long time. And it also must be emphasized that they include people who aren't necessarily accused of wrongdoing. A lot of the allegations, and these are not, it's been sometimes described as a client list. It is not. It's a list of people who are tied in some way, whether they met one of Epstein's victims, whether they are an alleged victim themselves. It's a long list of people whose identities have been under seal for various reasons, and some of whom we've heard about from media reporting. Some of them we may be hearing about the first time, and it's going to take some time to process and digest these documents.
Yeah, just for our viewers who are joining us right now, we have an 89-page exhibit that was just released. This is the first batch in the Epstein documents that were just released before Adam came on to talk with us here. You know, Adam, that's kind of seemed to be the theme going into the first release here, that we weren't going to really learn anything new, that we might get more, you know, of the color and tawdry details of some of the interactions of some of these high-profile individuals in Epstein's orbit, like, you know, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, what have you here. But a lot of people possibly were expecting some new names, and we had brought on some guests who were somewhat describing it as a client list. And to your point, this is a list of people who worked for Epstein, who had business with Epstein, who maybe was at a party once with Epstein, as innocuous as that. So it really kind of runs the gamut here, does it not? I mean, as far as ramifications go, you know, once we get all of these documents unsealed, we pour over them, do you anticipate more legal recriminations happening in the Epstein saga? More lawsuits filed by victims, more people speaking out?
It's hard to say, but it's useful to have a historical perspective on that point. Now, the reason that these documents are coming out is part of the same litigation that set all of this in motion. It was the lawsuit filed by Virginia Giuffre, now Virginia Roberts, against Ghislaine Maxwell. And it probably could be argued that Ghislaine Maxwell would not have been prosecuted if not for this lawsuit. And more importantly, the open records battle that followed this lawsuit, because all of these documents have been kept under seal under the terms of a settlement. It took an unsealing fight brought forward by the Miami Herald and its reporter, Julie K. Brown, who brought this to court as an open records battle and won up to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, starting a string of releases. And the first batch of releases brought enough pressure that provoked, that started the first prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, and after his suicide, the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell and her ultimate conviction.
Right.
There have been other litigation since then. There has been litigation looking at the financing of Jeffrey Epstein against banks involved in that, where he has been a client, and the bankers that he has engaged with. And through that litigation, we learn new people who may be connected to him, and we learn new information, new allegations, and there's, I won't make predictions, but in the release of information, it enhances our understanding, and historically, I'll say, it has led in the past to more litigation, more public understanding, and more information coming forward.
Okay. And one of the things that I want to start off with, this comment here, because you were reading my mind here, Sean. We're going to start off with is actually Les Wesner. I believe his name is Les. So he actually is the gentleman that created Victoria's Secret. So apparently, I guess now we know what Victoria's Secret really was. But he's the guy that created Victoria's Secret. He was actually very close with Epstein. He's actually the one that took a chance on Epstein, gave him money. Epstein was basically a con artist, gave him money to help him get going and starting business and everything. And, he's not in the know, I would say. I've seen several documentaries about this. So he knew about allegations prior to Jeffrey Epstein's conviction, and he kind of just seemed to wash his hands of it. So just FYI. Prince Andrew, who was mentioned, I've talked about the issue with Prince Andrew before on this show. Police did show up or to serve papers to Prince Andrew. I believe this was last year. For whatever reason, they said they could not reach him. I'm like, I think it's pretty, blatant. Where he is going to be. The royal family, they always announce when they're going to make appearances. So how to reach him if you needed to reach him. So Prince Andrew is another one that has basically gotten by for quite some time because of who he is and because he's a part of the royal family. Prince Andrew needs to be held accountable along as everyone else. And there are actual accusations against detailed, which I can't go into on the show, but there are actual detailed accusations against Prince Andrew. So it's another one of those things that makes you wonder, in reference to the royal family, did they know about that? Now, let's go to Donald Trump. We're going to start with him first because people are asking, what did it say about him? It says Donald Trump is mentioned multiple times in the newly unsealed Jeffrey Epstein documents, but I want to show you what is mentioned because when I saw his name, this piece right here, there's a conversation says, did you see her in the plane or on the trip to New York engaged in any kind of affectionate or contact with Jeffrey? No. With Ghislaine? No. How did it come to be that you were in a casino in Atlantic City? So again, this is Virginia answering these questions. It goes on to say, as we were flying, Jeffrey said, why don't you go sit in the cockpit to check out the landing? So we were sitting there and the pilots told me to go back and tell him that we can't land in New York and that we were going to have to land in Atlantic City. Jeffrey said, great, we'll call up Trump and we'll go to, I don't recall the name of the casino, but we'll go to the casino. So this is one of the examples where Donald Trump's name was mentioned, and it was mentioned in reference to going to Donald Trump's casino. From what I've read, Donald Trump, has not been confirmed that he's been on that island. So I didn't see anything that said he actually was there, that he visited Epstein Island. So it seems like his name was mentioned in reference to business transactions, right? Like his casino, etc. It goes on to say, and what happened with an ID issue? Miss Cawley says, objection. Then the witness says, all I knew is that she was not going to be allowed to gamble. And so I spent time with her. We were just walking around. I don't remember what we did. et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that answers the question there that people may have had about Donald Trump, because it's basically been confirmed through those documents that he was not on the island. So that's the first person that we're going to look at. The second one, though, this one, I don't think people knew about. Now, this was coming from Mario. He actually spoke to one of the Epstein victims, and she said that there was a prime minister involved. Listen to this. So now we're getting into this piece here. Breaking: major Epstein victim just sent me a bombshell. Today's documents mentioned a well-known prime minister that Epstein trafficked underage girls to. The witness just gave us this hint. Between us, though, I will hint at the PM who has captured the attention of the public. And this is a picture of a camel. Camel is all I can say without saying anything. The image in the message is that of a camel. Can you connect the dots on who this well-known prime minister is? Disclaimer: I protected the name of the witness at her request for her own safety. And here's a screenshot of that DM between Mario and one of the victims. So again, the name's not mentioned, obviously, but just showing you that so you can see it. And this is, I read this part to you, and this is Mario saying, can I read your statement above, your message, and can I mention your name? She responded, yes, but keep in mind that the prime minister hint is very dangerous for me. Maybe leave that info between us for now. However, when that information was released, this article has seemed to make its way back into the limelight again. How many people remember this? This was May 4th, 2023. And it says, Ehud Barak met with Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times, flew on private plane, report. This is former prime minister. Okay, let's get into this. So that's him, for those who are not aware. And it says, former Prime Minister Ehud Barak met with the late disgraced financier and child abuser Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times beginning in 2013, according to a new report on Wednesday by the Wall Street Journal. Barak was among the list of Jewish names, including pioneering linguist and left-wing activist Noam Chomsky, longtime Bard College president Leon Botstein, and filmmaker Woody Allen, listed in a newly uncovered private calendar for Epstein. The Wall Street Journal reported in the first part of its investigative series on the hugely influential Jewish donor who used his largesse to obscure what investigators uncovered years ago as an elaborate underage trafficking ring. Former Prime Minister of Israel. So the post here from Mario, where one of the victims says there was prime minister involved, and she gave the hint of the camel. After this post, people started pointing towards this article of Barak. So they think that it may have been him. We don't know. Again, allegedly, we do not know. But one thing that I do want to make very clear, and then we'll get into the next person. One thing is for sure, and that is that obviously Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing celebrities, politicians, seems like more so political officials. And Whitney Webb has pointed to this as he was doing this on behalf of Mossad. Now, Mossad is the national Israeli intelligence. A lot of this is starting to make more sense once you break everything down. Now we're going to go to the next person. Bill Clinton. Let's get into this one.
And Donald Trump, included in a 2016 deposition of Johanna Schoberg, a former employee of Epstein. She says in the document that she and Epstein had a conversation, and quote, he said one time that Clinton likes them young, referring to girls.
That statement right there, by the way, it's all over the internet. That's the statement that she made about, or that was made to her about Bill Clinton, that he likes them young. Let's go on.
To girls. When asked if Clinton was a friend of Epstein's, she said she understood Epstein had, quote, dealings with Clinton. Clinton has not been accused of any crimes or wrongdoing related to Epstein and has denied any kind of criminal activity. But in 2019, he admits to having flown on Epstein's private plane, but knew nothing of the financier's, quote, terrible crimes.
Don't you guys think it's funny that all these people that said they flew on his plane and they've been to his island, don't you think it's funny that all these people say, oh, I didn't know anything about those crimes? Really? Some of these people hung out with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted the first time. Remember, he was charged twice. Noam Chomsky, Woody Allen, both of them hung out with Jeffrey Epstein after those charges. But everybody's just like, yeah, I didn't know anything about what was happening there.
Schoberg also recalled a time she was with Epstein on one of his planes, and pilot said he needed to land in Atlantic City. Jeffrey said, great, we'll call up Trump and we'll go to, I don't recall the name of the casino, but we'll go to the casino. She says in the deposition she never gave a massage to Trump. This is the first reference to Donald Trump, but he is not accused of any wrongdoing.
Right now, the only person who has been prosecuted is a woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who certainly, should be behind bars. But what's interesting in this, network of all these men who've been trafficking young women and underage women for decades, and yet the only person that's been prosecuted, is a woman.
This is something people really need to think about. All these men in this client list that they don't want to reveal, all these men, none of them. They basically made Ghislaine Maxwell, she basically took the fall for everybody. Crazy, right?
Many, many other people that, should be held accountable as well.
The documents also contain excerpts of depositions taken of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who previously reached an out-of-court settlement in her sexual abuse lawsuit against Prince Andrew. Giuffre alleged in her deposition that Maxwell directed her to have sexual contact with people including former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Prince Andrew, and tech guru Marvin Minsky. Attorneys for Ghislaine Maxwell said in a statement on Wednesday she has consistently and vehemently maintained her innocence. This is the first set of documents to be unsealed under a December 18 court order, with more expected in the coming weeks.
Okay, let's go ahead and stop there. I want to answer this question and then we'll get into the next person. Jonna, where do they get these poor underage girls from? According to the documentaries that I have seen, they basically, by they, I mean Epstein, basically targeted girls that came from broken homes. They targeted girls that they knew needed the money, maybe were come from a single parent household. The parent maybe checked out. One of the girls that was in the documentary said that her mom was on and off of drugs. Like, they targeted those types of girls. It's really sad. Now, there was an event still on the Bill Clinton issue. There was an event that happened recently where Alex Rosen, I don't know who this guy is, but Alex Rosen, this is trending around on Twitter. Hillary Clinton was actually speaking at an event for Sheila Jackson Lee. So Sheila Jackson Lee is running for mayor. Hillary Clinton was there, I guess, to offer her support. And it did not go well for Hillary because this issue with Bill Clinton and these unsealed documents was brought to her attention at this event. So I want to go ahead and share this as well. And this is from Solomon. Remember, I interviewed him. It said Epstein client list. It says Alex Rawson gets dragged out for asking Hillary Clinton about Bill Clinton's trips to Epstein Island. Hold on to your seat for this one, folks.
Then you want somebody who's going to get up every day.
Hey, Hillary, why'd your husband visit Epstein Island 26 times?
Notice what's wrong with the crowd here. You see, we have become brainwashed as a people. We really have. The people there, they're more concerned about cheering on Sheila Lee for mayor. They're more concerned about that than they are about the fact of Bill Clinton going to that island over 20 something times. They're more concerned about that. Watch what they do to this guy.
Is this really necessary? Is this really necessary, guys? Is this really necessary? Is this really necessary, sir? Hey, is this necessary, officer? You guys are dragging a grown man out. Is this necessary? Seriously, come on.
Now, see, they're dragging him out, right? But Hillary Clinton, through all her corruption, she gets to stand on the stage. Let me say this again. They're dragging him out for asking why Bill Clinton was on that island over 20 something times. He's the one that gets dragged out by the police. But the woman who has a lot of corruption gets to stand on the stage. This is the world that we live in.
Hey, is this necessary, guys?
Don't hit me, man. You guys are dragging somebody out in public.
You're not welcome. Private event.
You decide
so why do you guys support like just endless government spending? I mean, she's giving more money to white people in Ukraine than you freaking idiots in Houston keep voting for her. Watch out.
Did you hear what he said? He said she's giving more money to white people in Ukraine than to you. But like loyal peeps we have been to the Democratic Party, everybody is there to protect Hillary.
Endless money to Ukraine, endless money for Israel. She's not anti-establishment. You guys vote for the same shit over and over again. Same crime. It's gonna be like just like Chicago. You guys love this shit.
All right, you have a blessed day, sir. Have a nice day.
So he managed to get the question out very quickly, but I think it was ridiculous to drag someone out of the venue. That was ridiculous. Again, but like I said, but the corrupt person gets to stand on the stage and speak to the people. That's the world we live in. Now we're moving on to Alan Dershowitz. And this is pretty much the meat of this particular story. Alan Dershowitz has been on this podcast tour, basically going out there to speak to audience and tell people why they need to, condemn Hamas. Do you condemn Hamas? To do that. And also tell people that they need to basically stand on the side of the state of Israel. Alan Dershowitz is local for me because he's a professor at Harvard University. He lives here. Just let that sink in. But Alan has some things to answer for because he was also mentioned in those unsealed documents. And it was very detailed in reference to Alan. The number of times Alan says, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Very detailed, though. Very detailed. And Alan has even gone as far to try to blame Hamas for his relationship that he had with Jeffrey Epstein. I kid you not. This guy is a problem. I've called this out. I don't know why people keep interviewing this guy. I really don't. Take a look at this in reference to Alan Dershowitz. So I shared this earlier. So let's go down. Can I make you bigger? One such powerful individual that Epstein forced then minor Jane Doe number 3 to have sexual relations with was former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, a close friend of Epstein's and well-known criminal defense attorney. Epstein required Jane Doe number 3 to have sexual relations with Dershowitz on numerous occasions while she was a minor, not only in Florida, but also on private planes in New York, Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. In addition to being a participant in the abuse of Jane Doe number 3 and other minors, Dershowitz was an eyewitness to the abuse of many other minors by Epstein and several other Epstein's co-conspirators. Again, I have to add this here, allegedly. Dershowitz would play a significant role in negotiating the NPA on Epstein's behalf. Indeed, Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement that provided immunity from federal prosecution in the Southern District of Florida, not only to Epstein, but also to any potential, I lost my spot there, sorry. Any potential co-conspirators of Epstein. NPA at 5. Thus, Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement with the provision that provided protection for himself against any criminal prosecution in Florida for allegedly abusing Jane Doe number 3. Because this broad immunity would have been controversial if disclosed, Dershowitz, along with other members of Epstein's defense team and the government, tried to keep the immunity provision secret from all of Epstein's victims and the general public, even though such secrecy violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Allegedly. Now, right after I shared that last night, right after I shared it, boop, Alan Dershowitz pops up on Fox News. Right after I shared it. Couldn't wait to jump on there. So, in all fairness, you're going to hear his side. And there's something I'm going to point out in this interview because this is not cool. Listen to what he says as he tries to defend himself and pay very close attention to the words that he chooses to use.
Joining us now, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, you are mentioned in this document. You are mentioned repeatedly and very specifically. It was the allegation against you was that Epstein forced then minor Jane Doe number 3 to have sexual relations with you, and that also you were an eyewitness to sexual abuse of other minors by Epstein. You have been out there vigorously defending your name, your honor, and denying these allegations fiercely. And I want to give you a chance now that it's come out in writing tonight to get your reaction.
Well, first of all, the woman who accused me has now stated categorically that she may have misidentified me, confused me with someone else. And these documents, if all the documents are revealed, will prove categorically that she did misidentify me, that I never met her, never heard of her, never spoke to her. And I can prove it by independent means. I have all my travel records. I have all my television appearances. I can prove that I couldn't possibly have been anywhere near any of the people who were involved in this. I was Epstein's lawyer. Of course I flew on his plane.
Pause. Everyone hold on to that bit that he just said right there, how he couldn't have possibly been anywhere near any of the people involved. Just hold on to that, because that's going to be important when we get to the discussion that he had with Kim Iverson months ago. Okay?
Ken Starr, with Roy Black, with other lawyers. We flew to meetings with the U.S. attorney, with the state attorney. And so people have to be very careful about what they're believing and when it happened. For example, as soon as Epstein was shown to be what he was, I ended my personal association with him completely but I maintained a legal relationship with him.
Pause. So, Alan, you know you done messed up, right? Alan Dershowitz just told you that as soon as these allegations came out against Jeffrey Epstein, that he ended his personal relationship with him. But he continued his legal relationship with him. Considering this was the second time, don't you think it would have been wise to end all communication and relationships that you had with Jeffrey Epstein at that point in time? He didn't have to remain his lawyer. He could have dropped him. Lawyers do this all the time. Why would you continue to have the professional relationship to still be his lawyer after all the information that came out? If you were smart enough to know, Alan, that dude's headed for some trouble, I need to end my personal relationship with him, then you mean to tell me he wasn't smart enough to know to end his professional relationship with him? No, he knew he should have ended both. The point is, Alan was trying to get paid. Alan wanted that money, honey. And, because sometimes it could be two things true at the same time. And it could be true that Epstein had information on Alan too. Let him continue.
Represented some of the worst people in the world and continue to do so. That's my.
Let's go back. Listen, because, sometimes the mouth just rolls. Listen to what he says about who he represented.
But I maintained a legal relationship with him. I represented some of the worst people in the world and continue to do so. That's my life. And
I represented some of the worst people in the world. And he said he's continued to do so. That's his life. Why are you representing all these worst people?
Of course, I represented Epstein. Now, the one point I do want to make is that I understand all the feminist groups and the radicals who think this is the worst thing in the world, that anybody ever had any contact with Jeffrey Epstein. Where are all those radical feminists when it comes to the Hamas rapes of young Jewish girls, sexual abuse, beheadings? They are quiet. They are silent. The incredible hypocrisy of the Me Too movement. Me Too, except if you're a Jew. And I want to have a list of all the radical feminists who are pushing hard, and I understand that, to get all these names revealed. And I want to know how many of them have ever actually condemned Hamas for the rapes that we now know occurred and the murders that occurred. How many have been silent, and how many, like the National Lawyers Guild, have actually approved of what Hamas did?
So just like that, Alan Dershowitz pivots from his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, his name being mentioned in those documents, his decision to choose to actually maintain a professional relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He pivots from that to Hamas. He's blaming feminists. He's blaming Hamas. Now he's trying to also say he's being attacked because he's Jewish. It's everyone's fault except for Alan. Alan is not taking any responsibility. Have you noticed that? How much of a clown do you have to be to sit up there and to honestly sit up there? Now you're going to blame Hamas for your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the poor decisions that you made in your life? This is insane. Second of all, he brought up the beheadings again. How many times does that need to be debunked? It's been debunked by mainstream media. Second of all, when it comes to the assaults, the alleged assaults by Hamas, that story's been turned all around as well. This was a way for Alan to take the heat off of him. You know, it's just everything's Hamas' fault now. It was supposed to rain today. It's sunny. Damn it. Damn that Hamas.
Let's put this in context. I'm thrilled that all these papers have come out. I urged them. I went to court. I asked for everything to come out because I knew that I had done nothing wrong and the papers would exculpate me. What I only worry about is that maybe the judges withheld certain documents. I want to make sure every single document comes out, including the documents that cast doubt on the credibility of some of the accusers and some of the accused. The public has the right to see everything and make their own judgment. We do not put the country in guilt by accusation, but guilt by association.
But by the way, I think that is fair. And I still like.
He just said we're not a country. We should not be a country of guilt by association. But he's been doing that for the past couple of months, ever since October 7th. All the people that have been protesting in support of the Palestinian struggle, according to Alan Dershowitz and all these interviews that he's had, he's made them guilty by association. He said that they were calling for the removal, the extermination of all Jewish people. I said that was not the case. I have been at those protests myself. I haven't heard people say that. He said, well, there was one person who said this. Oh, so all those other people at the protests, according to Alan Dershowitz, are guilty by association. But he says we shouldn't be that way. But he's been doing it.
Like you, believe that in the presumption of innocence, and I don't rush to judgment. And frankly, on many high-profile cases in this country, this show, starting with Richard Jewell, we've been right. We were right about Duke Lacrosse. We were right about UVA. We were right about Ferguson, Missouri, and Freddie Gray in Baltimore, because I didn't rush to judgment, and I had impeccable sources. I have known you for years. I don't really know why you like to defend these high-profile clients. Everybody certainly deserves a defense, including Mr. Epstein, including O.J. Simpson, and you and I had wars over Bill Clinton back in the day.
Sure.
You've taken on these high-profile cases. Why? And do you regret it at all? And did you ever see anything untoward about Mr. Epstein?
So Sean Hannity tells Alan Dershowitz that he's known him for years. Okay. And Alan Dershowitz knew Jeffrey Epstein for years. Just because you knew someone for years doesn't mean they weren't doing some shady shit. Doesn't mean that they weren't being corrupt. Just because you knew them for years. So think about that, people. Listen to this. Why do you continue to represent these high-profile clients?
I never did. And I do regret having ever met Jeffrey Epstein because it caused me the worst few years of my life when I was falsely accused and I was canceled by the 92nd Street Y, canceled by Temple Emmanuel. And then she ultimately admitted that she may have confused me with someone else. And so, you know, things obviously have gotten a lot better. Now, of course, these revelations put my name in the headlines again. But I've never been afraid of that because I have nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be ashamed of. I did nothing wrong. Would I do it again? Not if I knew I was going to be falsely accused, but if not for that, I've represented far worse people. I've represented murderers.
Pause. So you hear what he just said? He would do it again if he knew he wouldn't be falsely accused. He would still do it. He would still represent Jeffrey Epstein, knowing what we know now. He would still represent him because Alan trying to get that paper, okay? Alan trying to get paid. I've represented worse people, he says. He goes on to tell you worse people.
Would I do it again? Not if I knew I was going to be falsely accused, but if not for that, I've represented far worse people. I've represented murderers. I've represented people who have done terrible, terrible things. That's an essential part of our system. If I don't do it, who will? I had tenure. I had an.
So here we go with the, if I wasn't going to do the job, who was going to do it? Listen, there are several lawyers throughout this country. There are multiple different types of law that you can practice. And even if you are a criminal attorney, you can always choose to represent the other side. But let's be real. Alan went where the money was. Forget me, get me with the sob story.
Obligation to defend the most controversial, the worst people. Sometimes I won, sometimes I lost. Sometimes I created a plea bargain like I did in this case. By the way, Epstein was furious at me for the plea bargain. He wouldn't pay my fee because he thought I had done a terrible job because he ended up going to jail and having to report as a sex offender. The rest of the world thought it was a sweetheart. But that's what criminal defense lawyers do. I'm 85 years old. I hope the good Lord gives me the strength to continue to represent the most despised, the most controversial, the most unpopular people in the world. Look at the hell I got for representing Donald Trump. I did that and I lost a lot of my friends. And people say to me all the time, oh, I understand Epstein, but not Trump. Or I understand Trump, but not Epstein. You have to understand that the role of the criminal defense lawyer is to defend everybody who's falsely accused.
Well, I'll say this.
And we're going to pause that there because I'm going to show you something else about Alan Dershowitz, and we're going to get into another discussion. Because, you know, Alan, I don't know if he remembers this conversation, but I want you to think about what he just said on that interview. And then I want to go back to what he said to Kim Iverson when she interviewed him last year. Let's start with the first video, or actually, in March when she interviewed him. So let's start with the first. There are two videos.
Mr. Dershowitz, while I have you here, I covered the Jeffrey Epstein case extensively, and your name came up quite often. Virginia Giuffre actually accused you, then later backtracked, say that she had made a mistake. There were others who had also accused you, but you had said that they couldn't properly identify you or certain parts of you, and therefore...
No. It wasn't identify. It's that one woman said she saw me walking up the stairs of Epstein's house at a time years before I'd ever met Epstein. So that was just a complete made-up story. And the other woman had written a series of letters to the New York Post claiming she had videotapes of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton having sex together, and have many other people. And then, of course, she backed away from all of it. And I've been completely, totally exonerated and vindicated. I never met any of these people. I never heard of them. I defended Jeffrey Epstein the way I've defended hundreds of other people, some guilty, some innocent. But I did absolutely nothing wrong. I've been completely exonerated. I've been completely vindicated. I'm completely innocent. I've never touched anybody sexually since the day I met my wife during the...
Notice the vocabulary. Notice he keeps using words like completely. I'm completely innocent, completely cleared of any wrongdoing, right? This is where he goes off at the mouth a little bit.
Relevant time period. And so I did nothing wrong. And nobody who's ever accused me has done it with any evidence or any credibility. So I'm happy to go on with my life, let them go on with their lives, but categorically, unequivocally, I did nothing wrong.
So you do admit that you did receive a massage at his mansion?
No. What happened is my wife got a massage at his house, and then I had a neck and shoulder massage from a woman named Olga, who was like 45 years old. Virtually every...
So you caught the lie, right? So Kim Iverson is asking him if he received a massage, right? The first thing that he tells you is no, his wife got a massage. But then he goes on to admit he got a massage. So which is it?
Has done it with any evidence or any credibility. So I'm happy to go on with my life, let them go on with their lives, but categorically, unequivocally, I did nothing wrong.
So you do admit that you did receive a massage at his mansion?
No. What happened is my wife got a massage at his house, and then I had a neck and shoulder massage from a woman named Olga, who was like 45 years old. Virtually everybody who went to any of Jeffrey Epstein's houses got therapeutic massages.
He said virtually anybody who went to Epstein houses got therapeutic massages. But when Kim asked him if he got a massage, his first response was no.
Offered to everybody, but I've never had a sexual massage or anything improper. I've never been touched by an underage person, so no.
Catch this part right here. Catch this part right here. Again, this is him giving away too much information.
5 years old. Virtually everybody who went to any of Jeffrey Epstein's houses got therapeutic massages. They were offered to everybody, but I've never had a sexual massage or anything improper. I've never been touched by an underage person, so no.
Kim didn't ask him any of that. The only question that she said was, did you have a massage at Epstein's mansion? He lied first and said no, then admitted that he did. Kim didn't mention anything about him having an erotic massage. Kim didn't mention anything about him having a massage with these underage girls. He revealed that information. He volunteered too much information.
That's not true at all.
Okay.
What else? You have anything else you want to throw at me?
Okay. Here's
I did absolutely nothing wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Well, many of us suspect that Jeffrey Epstein was an asset to Mossad, and that Ghislaine Maxwell was in fact an agent of Mossad. There's a lot of evidence that point to this direction, and that they were operating a blackmail operation in order to get very powerful people, including people like yourself, in precarious positions to where you could potentially work on behalf of the state of Israel or protect the state of Israel.
I've been working on the state of Israel. I've been working for the state of Israel since before you were born.
Everybody catch that? He said he's been working for the state of Israel since before Kim was born. Oh.
Jeffrey Epstein once visited me in Israel. He had never been there. He didn't know anybody in Israel. He didn't work for the Mossad. The Mossad wouldn't hire him. And I hope he had videotapes of everybody, because they would show I never did anything improper. I have one other question. Are you used to having people come on your show to talk about one subject and then sandbagging them on another subject without any warning? Because it's nice to know you do that, and it will make certain that I have nothing to hide. I'm happy to talk about any of this, but I'm used to more ethical journalism.
No, we actually did notify the people who booked you onto the show that you would be asked about Epstein, and they assured us that you were aware of this.
No, they never notified me about that, and you'd have to show me that email.
So Kim actually did go on to post that, to share parts of that email on Twitter. But I also want to let you know, because I interviewed Kim not too long after this interview happened. I also want to let you know that Kim didn't contact them for the interview. They contacted her. So there's that.
Okay. One last question. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
No, of course not. Well, he didn't kill himself without the help of some people. He did kill himself, but he killed himself with the help of guards. He didn't do it by himself. He couldn't have done that. Obviously, though, the videos were turned off, and the guards turned their back, and his cellmate left. So I think he killed himself, but he killed himself with the assistance of some people in law enforcement.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dershowitz, thank you so much for joining the show. Appreciate you.
Well, it's the last time. It's the last time you'll have me on your show, so take advantage of it.
I think I got what I needed out of you. Thank you very much.
Well, you got what you wanted.
So there was that, pretty damning there. And it just, to me, he's been working for the state of Israel since before the day that Kim was born. There's something else too. Some people don't remember this. So I just want to refresh your memory. In 2019, the Times of Israel reported this. Dershowitz defends 1997 column claiming statutory and outdated concept. I'm just putting pieces of the puzzle together. You can form your own conclusions. But listen to this. 22 years later, He wrote this in 1997. 22 years later, he's defending the column on Twitter at an awkward time. Dershowitz was a member of a team that got convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein a plea deal that sent him to prison for 18 months, a sentence that critics today say was unusually brief and lenient. Let's go on. Dershowitz, a prominent defense lawyer and emeritus Harvard University law professor, himself faces accusations of sexual abuse from two of Epstein's victims. That was Virginia Giuffre and Sarah Ransom. He vehemently denied those accusations against him. The 1997 column is getting renewed attention after it was quoted in a current New Yorker article about Dershowitz and his entanglement with Epstein. In the column, which ran in the LA Times, Dershowitz argues that statutory is an increasingly irrelevant legal concept as teenage sex is normalized and rarely prosecuted. Again, this is an article that he wrote in 1997 by Alan Dershowitz. Let me show you something else. This part right here. Oh, whoops. I don't know why this moved up. This piece right here. He said this raises a fundamental question about the continuing legitimacy of statutory laws at the time when sex involving teenagers is so rampant and prosecution for statutory so selective. It is obvious that there must be criminal sanctions against sex with very young children, but it is doubtful whether such sanctions should apply to teenagers above the age of puberty, since voluntary sex is so common in their age group. He then suggests that the age of consent should be lowered to 15 or perhaps 14 years old. Now, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, it does not look too good for Alan. Doesn't look too good for Alan. And there's something else we need to add to this story. And this involves Alan Dershowitz and Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, let's connect all the dots. And I don't know why that came out kind of British. Connect all the dots. Mint Press reported this. Epstein-linked lawyer tipped to defend Israel at The Hague. According to reports, Benjamin Netanyahu has sought suspected Alan Dershowitz to defend Israel in the upcoming hearing at the ICJ. Now, two questions. Why is Alan Dershowitz, who's an American citizen, why is he contemplating going to defend another country at the ICJ? And don't even come at me with the dual citizenship. Don't even come at me with that. This is a problem. And two, don't you think it's a little bit odd in the timing to ask him to come and defend Israel's war crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza? Or maybe he's trying to run away, eh? Maybe he's trying to run away like this. CBS actually reported this story in 2020, how Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice in Israel. This was reported in 2020. I was actually surprised that this was on mainstream or reported by mainstream media. I want to start with, let me close that first. I want to start with this part right here, a widespread problem. A CBS News investigation has found that many accused American pedos flee to Israel, and bringing them to justice can be difficult. Jewish Community Watch, an American organization that tracks accused pedos, has been trying for years to find Carew and help bring him to justice. That's one of the people that fled. And it goes on to say here, since the small organization started tracking accused pedos in 2014, it says more than 60 have fled from the United States to Israel. Given its limited resources to identify these individuals, JCW says the actual number is likely much higher. Connect it all, guys. Connect all the dots. Connect Epstein. Connect some of the people that hung out with Epstein, that were on that island. Connect Netanyahu with the war crimes against the Palestinian people, and tie it all up in a bow. And this is what people have been saying for quite some time, which is that they believed that Epstein actually was blackmailing prominent figures in this country for Mossad. And look at where U.S. offenders are fleeing to: Israel. I like for people to connect the dots. Now, some of you did ask for that document. So The Guardian, I'm not going to read this, but I just want to show you where it's here, and I'll put the link in the chat. The Guardian actually included all the documents here. It's long. I'm telling you guys, it's a lot, but they actually embedded it all here. So I'm just going to give you the link to this article because I actually downloaded them the other day or last night actually, and it's a hot mess. So I'm just putting the link to that Guardian article in the chat. That's the easiest way to do it instead of trying to download like I did, and many of us did last night. But again, it's Unsealed Jeffrey Epstein Court Papers, read document in full. So, and that is that, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not had a chance to do so, please go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. It helps me with the algo. If you're a newbie, don't forget to subscribe and share. Okay, let's go to the comments. It's a crazy world out there, folks. And that is just part one. Part two is expected to drop tonight. Whoo! Let's go to the comments here. Thank you, Heidi. The U.S. Army is like the French Stranger Legion. Thank you for the super sticker, NY Varsity Sports. Thank you for this as well. If you are at a party and someone says, I want you to meet someone, we get that. Maybe even take a plane ride, but a ride to the island? Come on, man. Jonna says, where do they get? Oh, yeah, I answered that question. Thank you for this 007, Angelo. Woody Allen? Nah, he would never with a younger girl. Yeah, I know, right? Thank you, DC. Sheila Jackson Lee lost the Houston mayoral race. Thank you for this, NY Varsity Sports. This is the reason the film Sound of Freedom got suppressed. A movie that goes after the traffickers, they'll find your worst moment and cancel you. And thank you, nobody voting Nikki Haley. That was a big boy. You're talking about the guy in the video. Thank you, Janice. You boob is not letting me send super chat about BC being grabby on a 17-year-old. Yeah, probably not. Thank you, DC. Epstein case equals distraction from ICE and HHS trafficking. Shout out to Keophas Flag for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Keophas a big whoop whoop. And thank you, New York Varsity. Dershowitz accused Kim of ambushing him, but she had receipts, actual texts that said these questions were coming. She sure did. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then we can move to part two of Tight VNC. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, JVB. Happy time in Horrorland. Thanks, Sabby and Eric T, for the little bit of sanity. You are welcome. All right, Eric, I'm ready for the second part of the Tight VNC. Whenever you're ready. Thank you. Yes, it's crazy, guys. Like I said, I'm waiting for that part two to drop, but it's a hot mess. It is a hot mess. We're moving on to our next story here. I want to get into this story about Claudine Gay, president of Harvard University, again, local to me, that did resign. And there's a part about this conversation that I'm going to mention tonight that I feel has not been mentioned so far from what I've seen in commentary. Part of my job as academic advisor was to work with certain parts in reference to dissertations. So we'll get to that part, and I'm going to explain to you something that a lot of people are leaving out in reference to the story. But first and foremost, Claudine Gay has decided to resign from Harvard University. This comes after, again, billionaires like Bill Ackman have called for the university presidents to step down. It first started with UPenn president, now Claudine Gay president, after she was hit with a number of plagiarism allegations. And of course, there is still the president of MIT who's still out there, who he also thinks should resign. But what I want you to look at when we talk about the story tonight is not just about plagiarism. Is it right? Is it wrong? But it's also about the fact that big money, once again, is able to make decisions and the people really have no say so. Let's go ahead and start here.
Here at home, the president of Harvard University, Claudine Gay, resigned today, weeks after her controversial testimony before Congress about anti-Semitism, and as she faced mounting accusations of plagiarism. Erin McLaughlin has the story.
Tonight, embattled Harvard President Claudine Gay stepping down, abruptly ending her turbulent 6-month tenure as the institution's first Black president, the shortest term of anyone in that position. In a letter to the Harvard community, Gay writing, "It has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign, and that it has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, two bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus."
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying.
Calls for Gay's resignation followed backlash to this response at last month's congressional hearing, when Republican Elise Stefanik pressed her about anti-Semitism on college campuses.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes.
Pressure grew in the following weeks, with Gay facing multiple allegations of plagiarism in her academic work. Harvard initially standing by Gay, but today the board accepting her resignation, saying she had acknowledged missteps, but also faced deeply personal and sustained attacks.
Pause here for just a second, because there's something that I want to mention here. Claudine Gay's dissertation was written in the 90s. So all these years went by and nobody noticed that she had plagiarism in her thesis. But all of a sudden, when billionaires want to push university presidents out of their chairs, all of a sudden it just magically showed up. Oh, look, there's plagiarism here. Or was it that it was known for all that time and it was something that was kept quiet, and when it was time to use it, it was used?
Tonight, Stefanik claiming credit, saying this is just the beginning of what will be the greatest scandal of any college or university in history. Gay's resignation leaving the campus divided.
I'm glad that, it seems like we're moving in a direction where Harvard might begin to repair its public image.
I was flabbergasted. I was more than surprised. I was shocked. I don't think she was really given a chance from the start.
And Erin,
all right, let's stop there for a second. Now, again, I worked at Harvard, I worked at MIT, I worked at Boston University. And I'm just going to say it like this. First of all, this piece here is missing from the conversation. People are making it seem like she never did actually try to address what they called anti-Semitic. Like I said, being pro-Palestinian is not anti-Semitic. What the students were saying in reference to the protests and the letter that was written, people are trying to pretend like she actually did not push back on the students. That's actually a misconception. In fact, the Harvard Crimson itself even stated Harvard President Gay announces anti-Semitism training, condemns pro-Palestinian phrase from the river to the sea. So this is a part that's being left out by a lot of people. It says here, Harvard will work with its newly established anti-Semitism advisory group to implement anti-Semitism education and training for affiliates. University President Claudine Gay announced in an email Thursday afternoon. I affirm our commitment to protecting all members of our community from harassment and marginalization, and our commitment to meeting anti-Semitism head on with the determination it demands. Anti-Semitism has no place at Harvard. We are committed to doing the work to address this scourge. Gay announced the establishment of the advisory group to combat anti-Semitism late last month during a speech she delivered at Harvard's Hillel's Shabbat. At Harvard Hillel's Shabbat dinner for the relatives of college freshmen and juniors over family weekend. The new efforts to combat anti-Semitism announced by Gay came following enormous backlash against the university over its initial statement about October 7th. She went on to say that she condemned, right here, I condemn this phrase and any similar hurtful phrases. She went on to say that she condemned the phrase from the river to the sea. Now, you don't hear a lot of people mentioning this part. So she actually did go back and put pressure on those groups. But at that point, it was already too late. This is what I'm trying to explain to people. It had already been decided that they wanted her gone. When Bill Ackman wrote that letter to Harvard, Bill Ackman, who's a billionaire, by the way, it was already decided from day one, he wanted her gone. He wanted the president of MIT gone, and he wanted the president of UPenn gone. So just FYI, that's a piece that a lot of people are not mentioning. So even when she went back to try to self-correct, it was already too late. They were like, no, we want you gone. Again, think about the fact how a billionaire was able to come in and tell universities what they should and should not do. And that is something I've noticed before when I worked at these universities. Again, they're all owned by donor money. These elite institutions like Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Listen, these schools have large endowments, and Harvard has the largest endowment in the country. It didn't get that way just by them being great at academics. It got that way because they have a lot of billionaire donors and millionaire donors, and Bill Ackman was one of them. So essentially what you have, which is similar to our political system, you have donors controlling universities the same way that donors control our politicians. They did replace Claudine Gay. Look who they replaced her with. Go figure. Harvard University president is no longer a Black woman, but a white Zionist man. Claudine Gay resigns, and immediately Alan Garber is appointed. Israel did all of this to take control of one of America's most prestigious universities. Welcome to the United States of Israel, where you can criticize America, its president, and every government official, but you cannot criticize Israel. And this is the guy who replaced her. He's interim president. You know, like, it's like people have the title. They're like, I'm acting director. They're holding that spot until they get the person they really want. Sometimes the interim person actually does become the full-time person in that position. But this is what they wanted. This is actually who they wanted. Now, in reference to, I don't know why that's there. Oh, this part. I don't know why this is there. Oh, I scrolled down. Sorry. In reference to an important piece about this conversation that I haven't seen people include yet. When we talk about the plagiarism, and I don't condone plagiarism, period. But she's not alone. And I'm going to show you other examples. When we talk about the plagiarism, there's a process that you have to go through as a PhD student, as a doctoral student, when you are writing your thesis. So part of my job, when I worked with PhD programs, when I was advising PhD students, part of my job was to form the thesis committee. Now, people wonder, who are those guys? The thesis committee, these are the people that will read your thesis. You'll have multiple drafts. It's a long work in progress. They'll read your thesis, check and make sure that it's okay and acceptable to them. And then, of course, at the end, you have to defend your dissertation to these people, these same people who are part of your thesis committee. So essentially, if you were one of my students and it's that time of year where you're starting to work on your thesis, I would actually have to appoint a committee for you. So I would assign faculty members to you for your specified research area. Now, I worked with the sciences, so I was engineering, physics, that kind of stuff. So in particular, I would pick someone who actually studied and researched the same area that your thesis is focused on. So like, for example, I would not assign a faculty member that works in astrophysics for a student that is their research is quantum mechanics, right? Anywho, nobody seems to be asking this question. For all the people pointing their fingers at Claudine Gay, why isn't anyone mentioning these people? See, I shared this on Twitter because I feel like people really need to ask this question. Where is the call to condemn the faculty members that approved Claudine Gay's thesis? Students are assigned a thesis committee. Committees read the thesis before a student defends it. I know this because I used to assign thesis committees. Is Harvard protecting them? So, by the way, you can look this up. I pulled this up myself. Harvard University, the Graduate School of Arts and Science, thesis acceptance certificate. So they accepted it. And this is Claudine Gay taking charge, Black electoral success and the redefinition of American politics. You see these people right here? These little peeps? Sidney Verba, Gary King, Catherine Tate. This was July 1st, 1997. Now, this is usually the first page or sometimes second page that you would see in this document. Where are these people? Anybody? So someone did respond. Let me find it. I thought it was, oh, let me come here. I got some trolls in this mofo too. Some trolls came in and jumped in and I was like, oh, shut up. I thought it was Colorado guy. Maybe I didn't keep it. Oh, I don't think I kept it. Shoot. I don't know where it's at. I might have put the wrong link. Anyway, I don't know why I can't see it now. Cause like he replied and now I can't see it. It's really weird. I don't know. Twitter's weird like that sometimes. Anywho, Colorado dude had actually responded to this and he told me, he pointed out what happened to some of these people. Anyway, I forget which ones, but if I remember correctly, one of them that he pointed to, he said is still a professor at Harvard University. One of them went on to work at Brown, I believe. I have to double check. That might have been Catherine. The point is, folks, these individuals accepted the thesis. You signed this page. They read it, or they were supposed to. So why didn't they catch the plagiarism? And why is nobody pointing fingers at them? Just something I think that needs to be mentioned. Norm Finkelstein had something to say about this, and I think people need to be very concerned. The fact that billionaires can just come in and make decisions like that. He was on Katie Halper's show. Listen to what Norm Finkelstein said in reference to this.
What happened to President Claudine Gay, it's the biggest assault on academic freedom in our history. It is unthinkable that a president of a university would be overthrown by big money. You know what Balzac famously said, the novelist, behind every great fortune is a crime. So this billionaire criminal class, if they can determine the president, they can determine every facet of university life. And I've
sounds like politics, right?
Talked to many student organizations, including at U of P and at Harvard. And I've said, your first demand when school resumes, McGill has to be restored. And that should be the first demand at Harvard. Claudine Gay has to be restored. If you don't restore her, you've set a ghastly precedent. You will be the alumni of a generation of students that allowed for the end of academic freedom. What happened to President?
So that's a very important point that Norm made. Like, what is happening here, right? And I'm not here to say that she is innocent of the plagiarism. Not here to say that at all. But what I am here to say is I want to know why those faculty members approved it in the first damn place. And why isn't anyone coming for them? And there have been some double standards. Why isn't anyone coming from Gorsuch? I'm going to show you a couple other people that had some plagiarism in the work. Gorsuch writings borrow from other authors. Here we go. He's just one of them. We're going down the list. Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch copied the structure and language used by several authors and failed to cite source material in his book and an academic article, according to documents provided to Politico. He's one of them. The documents show that several passages from the 10th chapter of his 2006 book, The Future of Assisted Suicide and Euthanasia, read nearly verbatim to a 1984 article in the Indiana Law Journal. So there's Gorsuch. There's also Alan Dershowitz. What? Yes, right back at it. Here comes the Dersh again. Eric, I need a timestamp for this. I thought I had a timestamp. Let me pull it back up. Yeah, but Alan Dershowitz. So actually, I can just pull it up myself. That should have a timestamp on it. Sorry, guys. Balls. Let me just go in. I know it's 19-ish. There we go. All right, here we go. Norm Finkelstein questioned Alan Dershowitz. So I think it was right about there. Yep.
To you.
No, I've no. You've shown me nothing.
Wait.
Let's start with that. That's
Okay.
a categorical lie.
Alan,
What you're hearing
Dershowitz
now on radio is that a claim that Mr. Finkelstein made available to me certain charts.
No,
that
I
is
never
a
said
categorical lie.
No. Okay, Mr. Dershowitz, I think you had about 5 minutes time. I wasn't looking at the clock. If we're going to have a civil debate, you're going to have to remain.
But it's not going to be a
you're
debate
going to
about
have
me.
to.
Let me be very clear
I'm not
about
debating
that.
you. I have
Okay.
no interest in you, Mr. Dershowitz. None at all. I'm interested in the scholarship, and I'm interested in the facts, and I'm interested in your book. Now, in 1984, one Joan Peters published a book called From Time Immemorial. The book was universally recognized by serious scholars to be a fraud. Without wanting to toot my own horn, I'm widely recognized as the person who exposed the fraud. I know that book inside out. I read it at least 4 times, and I went through all 1,854 footnotes. I started to read your book, Mr. Dershowitz. I then came to chapter 1, footnotes 10, footnote 11, footnote 12, footnote 13, footnote 14, footnote 15, footnote 16. All of the quotes are from Joan Peters. They are so from Joan Peters that you have a long quote here from Mark Twain on pages 23 to 24. I turn to Joan Peters, page 159 to 60. The identical quote from Twain with the ellipses
Is
in the
ellipses. Is the Twain quote wrong?
With the ellipses,
Is the Twain
let me
quote
finish,
wrong?
sir.
No, but the key
with
is
the ellipses in the same places. The identical quote from Twain with the ellipses in the same places.
It's been widely quoted, as you know.
Really,
Now,
Mr. Dershowitz?
what's your point? Is it a correct quote?
Let me finish, Mr. Dershowitz.
I want to ask you a question. Is it an accurate quote of Twain? Did Twain say
Professor
what I
Dershowitz,
quote him as?
So there was Alan Dershowitz, pretty old school video there of Democracy Now!, right? There was Alan Dershowitz also was accused of plagiarism. Jonna says he's going to say, but Hamas. Old school video. It was also called out. If you look at History News Network, they also mentioned this as well in reference to Alan Dershowitz. And it says, did Alan Dershowitz borrow shamelessly from a discredited history book? So this piece right here, I want to go to Oh no, I don't want to go to that part. I think it's this piece right here. Wait a minute. Make sure I'm going to the right part. Okay, yeah. Mr. Finkelstein claims that Alan Dershowitz's latest book, The Case for Israel, shamelessly borrows from Joan Peters' controversial book, From Time Immemorial, which Mr. Finkelstein claims is a fraud. Mr. Dershowitz disputes the charge that he borrowed shamelessly from Peters. In late September 2003, Mr. Dershowitz and Mr. Finkelstein appeared on Democracy Now! So he went on to say that basically, let me go down here, sorry. In the introduction to The Case for Israel, Professor Dershowitz of Harvard Law School asserts that his account is supported by facts and figures, some of which will surprise those who get their information from biased sources. Yet the evidence Dershowitz adduces will surprise no one familiar with the most notorious source of historical bias on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict ever published in the English language. The charts below document Dershowitz's wholesale lifting of source material from Joan Peters' monumental hoax From Time Immemorial. Dershowitz not only copies Peters shamelessly, but knowingly does so from a book serious scholars have uniformly condemned. And you can see this here in the chart here, Dershowitz, Peters. I can put this article in the chat for you guys to look at a little bit later. But the point is, where's the push to remove Alan Dershowitz from Harvard? Where's that push? You're not going to see it. Where was the push to remove this professor from Princeton? So there was another one, Princeton professor Kevin Kruse, accused of plagiarism in Cornell dissertation, surprised by lack of citation. So this is Kevin Kruse here. And I look at a little bit of this. It says, Professor of History Kevin M. Kruse was accused of several instances of plagiarism by conservative historian Philip Magnus in an article published in Reason in June. In the article, Magnus alleged that Kruse plagiarized sections of his 2000 doctoral dissertation at Cornell University, as well as sections of his 2015 book, One Nation Under God, How Corporate America Invented Christian America. Magnus claims that Kruse plagiarizes Georgia Institute of Technology professor Emeritus Ronald H. Bayer's book, Race and the Shaping of the 20th Century Atlanta. I looked this up the other day. Kruse still works at Princeton. La-di-dee, la-di-da. Mark Lamont Hill mentioned this. He said the next president of Harvard University must be a Black woman. And so here's my take on this. I get where he's coming from. At the same time, I start to wonder sometimes, why are we constantly trying to put ourselves into spaces that actively do not want us there? One thing that hasn't been mentioned about Claudine Gay by a lot of people is the fact that apparently, according to other Black staff and other Black faculty members at Harvard, they felt like she was not supportive of them. That when they made these types of complaints, she was nowhere around or she did not support them. Then when it started to happen to her, then it's like looking around for the same type of support. That's coming from faculty members there at Harvard. But why are we trying to still put ourselves in? Guys, I worked at these schools. I left for a reason. And I'm here to tell you, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons why I left is because these institutions like Harvard, Boston University, Yale, Princeton, these schools, they're not, they're not really for us. Like, I'm just going to be honest. They're not. And it wasn't just like staff and faculty members that had these issues. Students had these issues at these schools as well. But what we'll constantly see is like this statement, the next president of Harvard University must be a Black woman. And for what? Because what good does it matter? If the next president of Harvard University is a Black woman, What does that matter if there's no support network around her? And that's what happens most of the time. There's no support. You got plenty of resources. It's a wealthy school, but there's no support. So if you don't have the support, you don't have that type of organization where people aren't looking out for themselves and their own careers, and they're willing to actually be supportive of each other and each other's success, what's the point? Why does it have to be these schools? Why not, be a president of a public university? Don't hate on public schools. Most people that go to college go to public schools. Why not? There's also HBCUs. Sometimes I feel like we're just constantly trying to push ourselves into the, it's like you're playing a video game and you finally get to the final boss. And you beat the final boss and you get to sit on the throne and you think the game's over, but the game's not over yet. There's another boss that you didn't know about that comes and whacks you out of your seat. So why do we keep trying to do this? Why? So that's my take. No shade to no one. I just don't understand. What and what? And then what happens after she's there? Ajamu commented about this as well. Ajamu said, why? If Black folks do not rally to support one of the last one who was under attack by Zionists, it's like saying your replacement at CNN had to be Black, even though everyone would know that person would be to the right of you and of no value to Black people. Be careful, African. So that's a good point. Obviously, if they do bring in another Black woman to be the president of Harvard University, it's obviously probably going to be someone that's a Zionist. So what's the point? I'm all for representation, but at what cost sometimes? At what cost? I don't feel the answer to these problems is just let's just insert another one. That'll fix the problem. It won't fix the problem. It won't fix the problem because the universities is controlled by big money. You want to really fix the problem? You really want to change things at these universities? Get these universities to stop taking billionaire money. Then you'll see a big change. Let's go to some of the comments here. Constructive economics. You're falling for the red herring tactic to extract away from their real intent. Bill Ackman is a racist Zionist and he got mad because a Black woman dared not to kneel. I've already covered that story, constructive economics. I've already covered that story on this channel multiple times. So don't know what to tell you there. Thank you, Willis. African Holocaust, the true brutal Holocaust. That guy McFly, America works for Israel. All funding is one way. Political influence, military aid. They have free education and healthcare. We have Biden. Oof. Thank you for the super chat, NY Varsity. A member of any of these peoples who speak or spoke a Semitic language, including in particular the Jews and Arabs. Wait, this is Harvard, right? Thank you, Aspen Fallen. Young Norm Finkelstein was hot. I knew it. That's funny. Thank you, Carol. So happy I found you. Good job on what you do. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. In the biomedical sciences, the thesis is archaic. Your right intro / discussion and past publications in between. Not sure if all TC mentors even read. That's horrible, Nathan. They're supposed to read. We sign off on it. Willis, thank you. White supremacy plagiarized all of Black America. And we are moving into the final story. We will do call in tonight, guys. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. And we're going to go ahead and get into this story about Charlamagne the God and Joe Biden. So if you have not heard Apparently, Charlamagne is not happy with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris for that matter. But remember, Charlamagne the God did endorse Joe Biden. I want to take you back because he went through some things with Joe. I want to take you back a couple years ago when he first said that he did not understand the hype around Joe Biden. And I want to show you this because things did change. Let's get into it.
The Democratic presidential candidates blanketing South Carolina just 2 days away from that crucial primary, trying to appeal to the key demographic of Black voters who made up 60% of the vote in the 2016 Democratic primary.
The African American, Latino, Native American communities that have been hit the hardest by the war on drugs.
The African American community, the most loyal support that exists in the Democratic Party.
The next generation of African American doctors, nurses, and researchers need to be supported.
I believe that we are very far from racial justice in the United States of America.
Out front now, Charlamagne the God, host of the radio show The Breakfast Club. He's been interviewing the candidates on a show, also a South Carolina native, and you've been spending a lot of time down there. Okay, so recently when you and I spoke, you were talking about Mayor Pete, and you were saying, sure, he hadn't been showing the numbers yet in the Black community, but you felt he had the best agenda. You were pointing people out to his agenda.
Yeah, I do like the Douglas plan. That has since changed, though. I like the Greenwood initiative that Mayor Bloomberg is presenting as far as a Black agenda.
Okay, so
I still like the Douglas plan, though.
Okay, but then let's get to them. Obviously, Bloomberg's not on the ballot there, but do you now think? I mean, because originally you had been saying you were moving towards Mayor Pete. Is that changing too?
I wasn't moving towards Mayor Pete. I never fully endorsed Mayor Pete. But I think Mayor Pete stands the goodest chance of anybody in South Carolina. I do.
Let me pause here for a second. See, this is what channels like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC will do sometimes. When it comes to the political races, they'll bring on someone who hosts more of like a Breakfast Club, more like a hip hop show. Like, I mean, they do have interviews. Don't get me wrong. They interview presidential candidates and things like that. But it's more, it's different. They'll bring on someone that hosts more like a hip hop like radio show and pick their brain about electoral politics. But they won't bring on people like Breonna Joy Gray, someone who's actually deep in electoral politics, has been a part of a campaign and actually talks about electoral politics. That's on purpose. Charlamagne the God actually said in this part, he said that Pete Buttigieg actually had a good chance in South Carolina. Both of us lived in South Carolina. Charlamagne was actually my best friend's neighbor when I was a senior at the University of South Carolina. I don't know what made Charlamagne the God think that, because I knew damn well there was no way that South Carolina was going to be a win for Pete. Not just because of conservatism, but also because of the LGBTQ community. They were not going to be feeling Pete because of that. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But they'll bring on people who don't cover electoral politics as much to give their opinion, to purposely mislead the people. No shade to Charlamagne, but to purposely mislead the people and make the people lean more towards the centrist or the center-right candidates, instead of bringing on someone like Breonna Joy Gray, who's going to encourage the audience to support someone who's further to the left. Pay attention to that.
I think that this week, I think he spent too much time attacking Bernie, especially on the debate stage, as opposed to telling America and telling South Carolinians why they should go out there and vote for him. I think a lot of them on that stage did that, not just Mayor Pete, though.
So talk to me, though, about Bloomberg, because obviously he's come under immense criticism, right, for stop and frisk, and whether he intended that as a racist policy and his response to that. Why is it that you think he has the best agenda then for African Americans?
I mean, listen, all the criticism is deserving. I give him criticism. When it comes to things like the stop and frisk policy, there are people that are still being affected by that today. So, you always have to hold them accountable for that. But, I'm just going off the fact that I'm voting for my interests in 2020 and my interests of Black people. So when I look at the Greenwood initiative, he wants to create, 100,000 new Black-owned businesses, and he wants 1 million new Black homeowners, and he wants to put, $70 billion into the poorest and most disenfranchised neighborhoods in the country. Yeah,
after he had police officers beat, rough up, and frisk black kids. Now he wants to do these things. Michael Bloomberg is a Zionist. You see what I'm saying? You guys see what I was trying to tell you? This is who they bring on to tell you this kind of stuff. It's a mess.
To look at that as a black man and say, you know what, that would be good for our people. Now, do I trust that he's going to do it? I don't know, but I just like the actual initiative because I'm voting my interest, and that's it. And I'm not one of the black people that Mayor Bloomberg bought off, by the way. I'm just speaking from the fact.
Well, you're looking at the policy, and that's what you say. So, Congressman James Clyburn, of course, has been the most powerful endorsement in South Carolina Democratic politics for a long time. He gave an emotional endorsement of his longtime friend, Joe Biden. It wasn't a surprise to anybody that he did it, but he did it in a very, meaningful way. Here's part of what he said.
As I stand before you today, I am fearful for the future of this country. No one more committed to the fundamental principles that make this country what it is than my good friend, my late wife's great friend, Joe Biden.
I mean, gives you goosebumps to hear it. It's obviously very heartfelt. How much will that endorsement matter?
Oh, it's going to matter a lot in South Carolina. I love O.G. Clyburn. His wife is from my hometown, Moncks Corner, South Carolina. R.I.P. to Emily Clyburn. But I just don't understand the hype behind Joe Biden.
Pause here for a second. So you heard what Charlamagne said. He said, oh, yeah, I love Jim Clyburn. He's from my hometown. Okay, great. But Jim Clyburn ain't doing anything for black people in South Carolina. Jim Clyburn isn't doing anything. You just like him because he's from your town, right? So this is where he gets to the part where he said he doesn't understand the excitement around Joe Biden. So we're going back and we're going to bring it forward.
To quote Tupac, when I see Joe Biden, I'm like, yo, you really ain't shit without your homeboy. Because without Barack Obama, I don't see what all the hype is behind Joe Biden. Like, they talk about him being the most electable candidate and he's the only person that can beat Trump. How? He hasn't even proven he can beat Bernie Sanders in a primary yet. So what makes them think he could beat, Donald Trump? I know a lot of older voters in South Carolina are going to probably vote for Joe Biden, but I would hope that, a lot of the younger voters in South Carolina, a lot of those new registered voters decide to turn out on Saturday as well and, maybe shake things up a little bit.
So, okay. Now, that was years ago. That was the 2020 presidential election. And he said he didn't understand the excitement around Joe Biden. Now, he did actually have the opportunity to interview Joe Biden. And Joe Biden said to him in that infamous Breakfast Club interview, which I can't play on here because they have copyright. Sorry, it is what it is. He said, listen, Jack, if you got to figure out whether or not you're going to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black. Later on, Joe Biden issued an apology towards Charlamagne. Again, it's just, here it is, this man sitting there right in your face, basically telling you that if you don't vote for him, then you're not black. And you sit there, you think about all the things that Joe Biden did towards the black community during his career. The same guy who co-wrote the crime bills. He's going to tell you you're not black if you don't vote for him. And Charlamagne did not push back on him as much as he should have. I don't know if he was nervous or whatever. I don't know if he just wanted to keep access to Joe Biden. I don't know what it was. But it made me feel some kind of way that you would just sit there and let him say that to you and just know, this type of, you had this old white dude tell you that you weren't black if you weren't going to vote for him. Now, after Joe Biden apologized, he did do a little bit of the podcast tour here. He went on to MSNBC. Listen to this.
Joining me now is Charlamagne the God of The Breakfast Club on Power 105.1. Charlamagne, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me, Joy. How are you?
I'm good. So, I don't know if you were able to hear Kareem. We had a little bit of an audio problem toward the end. But, I want to, first of all, congratulate you on the interview. The interview, people are talking about that last bit of it. That's the part that went viral. But the substance of the interview was really solid. You had very blunt questions for Vice President Biden. They were about substance. They were about what you want to see for the community. Your listeners, I'm sure, give you lots and lots of feedback about what it is that they want from this man. What are people telling you that they want him to do?
Just some really major policy commitments for the Black community, mainly in the form of economic justice, so we can, tip the scales on some of this wealth inequality in America. I do hear a lot of people say, we also want him to have a Black woman running mate, but not just any Black woman running mate, one that's going to actually, get in office and care that Black people benefit from her presence there. We need substance and significance over symbolism. And he's already committed to putting the Black woman on the Supreme Court. So I just want him and the Democratic Party to know that it's time to give back to the Black community in a very tangible way. But I can say that, the major point that I'm hearing about is just, economic justice, some form of economic justice.
Okay. So Charlamagne the God went on to endorse Joe Biden. And now Charlamagne the God is having regrets. In fact, he is saying that he feels burned. Charlamagne the God feels burned by Biden endorsement and says that Kamala Harris disappeared. Oh, let's get into this. Radio host Charlamagne the God said he regretted backing the Biden ticket in 2020. Politico reported on Tuesday, and he said he felt like Vice President Kamala Harris disappeared when they got to the White House. I'm sorry. It's kind of funny. Charlamagne, the host of The Breakfast Club, also told the outlet that he had no plans to endorse Biden and Harris in 2024 as he felt burned over his 2020 endorsement. Charlamagne is taking this personal. I've learned my lesson from doing that, he told Politico. Once they got in the White House, she kind of disappeared. When I give people my word, like, yo, man, I think we should be supporting Kamala Harris for vice president because she's going to hold it down. When we say those things and people don't see her holding it down, that causes issues. He also said he still receives backlash over his 2020 endorsement. Damn, you told us to vote for them? Do you know how many people say that to me all the time? He said. The radio host endorsed the ticket in 2020 because Biden chose Kamala Harris as his running mate. I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I'll tell you that in a heartbeat. I'm not necessarily voting for Joe Biden. I'm voting for Senator Kamala Harris, he said at that time. I believe she's a political change agent, exactly the leader this country needs to lead us into the future. If she's not, I'll be wrong, Charlamagne said in October 2020. So again, you see who they get political insight from? He thought that Kamala Harris was going to be a change agent. Kamala isn't changing anything but her shoes. Every time you turn around, you see Kamala's just walking. That's it. Just walking. He goes on to say, I'm just so tired of old white male leadership in politics. Charlamagne was joined by Harris for an interview in December 2021 that quickly got heated after the host asked who the real president is. I remember that. And there's Kamala there. I want to know who the real president of this country is. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin? Charlamagne asked on his Comedy Central show, The God's Honest Truth. While he and Harris discussed Democratic Senator Joe Manchin's opposition to spending legislation being debated on Capitol Hill. The interview went off the rails as one of Harris' aides tried to step in and end it, but Harris answered the question. Come on, Charlamagne, she said. No, it's Joe Biden, she repeated as she tried to give his reasons for the question. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president. And it's Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden. And I'm vice president. And my name is Kamala Harris. The radio host also said he didn't expect Harris or Biden to join his show for any interviews in 2024. So you see, now he can come out and voice his real opinion. He can tell you how he really feels because he's already letting you know he doesn't expect them to join for 2024. He infamously interviewed the president in 2020, which ended up with Biden telling listeners, "You ain't black," if they were having trouble deciding between him and Donald Trump. So this is something that I've noticed before. It sucks for Charlamagne. It really does, just keeping it real. But this is something I've noticed before. Again, this is done on purpose. I think that some of the people in the left political space have been blackballed by some of the mainstream media because they're bringing on people like Charlamagne the God. Again, The Breakfast Club is not a political show. They're bringing on people like Charlamagne the God, or they'll bring on, what's his name? Moff Hoffa? RFK Jr. did an interview on Moff Hoffa's show. Again, that's more like a hip hop based channel. They'll bring on those people, but they won't bring on people who actually do political shows like Bree does, and she's worked with Bernie campaign, or anybody else actually in left independent media. They won't bring those people on, because when they have in the past, they're like, oh no, they're getting this message across to people. They'll bring on people like Charlamagne because they know Charlamagne's going to say what they want to hear in reference to the status quo. That's how it works, folks. That's how it works. We will do call-in tonight. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'll be back, and we'll head on over to call-in. And Eric, I think there's just a couple super chats.
Yeah, we got a few super chats here to read. All right, here we are on Thursday. Yeah, Sabby was wondering whether or not to do call-in, but then she thought, nah, everybody's going to want to talk about Dershowitz and all that on call-in, the Dersh, and all this fun stuff. So this is a part of the show where we give Sabby a little break, and then we come back, and then we'll be transitioning over to call-in, which you can do on your browser or on your cell phone with the app. And Sabby will be posting the link in the chat soon. It'll be the pinned link. All right, let's see what we got here for a few chats that came down the pike here. I like this one from Deneen. She said, "I'm still trying to find my way since I became white in 2020." That was pretty good. Yeah. Joe said, he said it. He said, so thanks for the super chat, Jamal. "In hindsight, voting just to defend your black card wasn't the best idea." Thanks for that one. And thanks for this one, Jeremy Carson. The super chat: "Forces representation is so played out. Let's do our thing." Thanks for that one, Jeremy. And let's see, we had a couple of ones up here on the Rockfins. Let's see. Thanks for this tip comment on Rockfin. A couple of them from Annie O. "Seems like we're slowly getting evidence of why no countries are helping the people of Gaza and why the U.S. gives Israel whatever they want." And also from Annie, "Maybe the fact that Mossad, CIA, MI5 can't blackmail Trump is why the predator class smears him so bad and sabotage his presidency." It's thanks for those tipped comments, Annie O. And there's and the call-in link will be coming up. So Sabby will be posting it. I view like AIPAC, like people frame it in terms of like that. Why does AIPAC own all these congressmen? Why do they own? Why are they running our government? And I think it's of a piece. It's like AIPAC is just really good at working that system. And the system is money and corruption. You have billionaire and and mega corporation money, and it flows into Congress by the billions, and Congress works for them. And so I think AIPAC, I think they're just particularly good at working that system. But there's lots of people that own Congress, but they're all billionaires or they're all huge corporations. You got Big Pharma, you got Wall Street, military industrial complex, the usual suspects. And so I think it's important to always connect that to the money and the corruption, and then to, what's our demand? Our demand needs to be, get the money out. And the solution, gets into how you do that with public financing, fixing the Constitution so money is not speech, banning big money lobbying. I mean, there are real direct solutions that we can put on this. With the Charlamagne story, I feel like there's like going against Biden or saying like Biden is a problem and Biden's not going to make it. I feel like that's like the current safe, like fake left position, kind of like the way it was okay for people to support Bernie because he was running as a Democrat. And so, it's kind of the factional infighting of kind of fake leftist liberals, but they're not, they're not promoting a real candidate like a Cornel West or a Jill Stein. They're, when it comes down to it, then they're going to say, oh, but that's why we need Gavin Newsom or some other, bought off Democrat like that. And of course, the real criticism and the real path forward is to have someone who's not in the uniparty and is not unacceptably corrupt. There's other thing I wanted to touch on with the earlier story with the immigrants getting benefits, and I think it's really important to always look at this as the problem isn't that immigrants are getting these benefits or getting too much. The problem is, we live in this brutal society where the basic needs are not met of people. And you get these, political wins and things that happen where, then some of it goes to immigrants and some things go to different groups and whatnot. But the core problem isn't what they're getting. The core problem is what the mass of people, and especially poor people, are not getting. And, and when you get into the reasons for that, it's because, we live in this capitalistic, corrupt society. And the way that, we need to envision and talk about having a more socialist society where the basic needs, there's a concept of decommodifying the basic needs, which means everyone gets housing, period. Everyone gets food and water and everyone gets healthcare. With the healthcare question, right? We need to be demanding that we have a nationalized health system, US NHS. And so I just think it's really important to make clear that distinction, in that it's not the immigrants' fault. I mean, the immigrants are powerless, and the reason this place in this society sucks is because the billionaires are stealing so much from all of us. And when we address that, we can really get somewhere. But calling people illegal isn't gonna fix any of that.
All right. We are heading on over to call-in.
All right. See you in the call-ins.
Okay, guys, this is episode 146. Epstein Unsealed, Charlamagne the God, Claudine Gay, and anything else that you want to chat about. Let's go ahead and head on over there. The link to call in is pinned to the top of the chat. You can use the app, or you can actually log in from your computer. It works both ways, believe it or not. And you can call in from your computer. Thank you for the super sticker so much, B Air Rants. Thank you so much. We're going to head on over to call in, guys. So you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.